Breaking news: Britain is in turmoil. Keir Starmer has crossed a line no Prime Minister has ever dared. In a shocking outburst that stunned Westminster, he directly attacked King Charles, accusing the monarch of betraying his duty and shattering the fragile balance of Britain's democracy. This followed a bombshell revelation: the King's quiet yet undeniable gesture of support toward Nigel Farage and Reform UK. That single act transformed what was once dismissed as a fringe movement into a national force. Now, Britain stands on the brink of a historic shift that could change everything. The silence of Buckingham Palace has long been the Crown's greatest weapon. For centuries, monarchs avoided direct involvement in politics, keeping themselves above the chaos of Parliament and party divisions. But this time, something snapped. Behind closed doors, King Charles broke with tradition. He met privately with senior Reform UK figures and, according to insiders, the meeting carried a tone of recognition, perhaps even tacit approval. Word of this secret engagement spread like wildfire, sparking a storm that could not be contained. When Keir Starmer learned of it, he erupted with a fury that shocked even his closest allies. Sources inside Downing Street report that Starmer condemned the King's actions as reckless and dangerously inflammatory, warning that the monarchy was undermining the will of the people and dragging Britain into uncharted waters. But what Starmer viewed as defense of democracy, many in Parliament regarded as political self-destruction. To openly confront the Crown, to put himself on record attacking King Charles directly, has unleashed a backlash unlike anything in modern history. Already, MPs whisper of betrayal, aides speak of desperation, and the public is reeling from a Prime Minister who seems to be spiraling out of control. And this eruption did not happen in isolation. The Labour government is already collapsing under economic failures, internal rebellions, and vanishing public trust. Inflation has surged, energy bills are crushing households, food prices keep climbing, and mass protests fill Britain's streets. Labour's promise of stability has disintegrated into scenes of anger and despair. And now, with King Charles quietly stepping into the spotlight, Reform UK has seized the opportunity of a lifetime. Nigel Farage, never one to miss a moment, immediately declared the monarch's gesture a turning point in British history, a signal that the establishment itself admitted Labour could no longer lead. The Prime Minister's furious outburst has turned what might have been a political scandal into a constitutional crisis. By attacking the King, Starmer has broken the one unspoken rule of British politics. You do not challenge the Crown. Whether blinded by rage or consumed by fear, he has done what no leader before him dared. The consequences are already spilling across the nation. Headlines scream of a government at war with the monarchy. Polls show Labour in freefall, sliding beneath Reform UK in key constituencies. And within Westminster's corridors of power, there is talk of betrayal, panic, and even whispers of no confidence. For millions of ordinary Britons, the story is simple. The King reflected the voice of the people, and Starmer silenced it with arrogance. Across rural towns, struggling cities, and working-class communities, Reform UK is being hailed not as a fringe protest, but as a national savior. With every word of Starmer's assault on King Charles, the movement grows stronger. Britain is not just watching a political scandal, it is witnessing the possible end of a Prime Minister's career and the birth of a revolution that could shake the nation to its core. The shockwaves from Starmer's verbal attack on the monarch are spreading faster than Westminster can contain. Within hours of the leak, Britain's political landscape was thrown into chaos. News outlets flashed breaking banners with words rarely seen in modern times: Prime Minister versus the King. The symbolism was devastating. In a nation where the monarchy represents unity, tradition, and continuity, Starmer's fury was cast as reckless, arrogant, and unforgivable. Headlines that once leaned sympathetic toward Labour turned hostile overnight. Even publications historically aligned with the left issued fierce condemnations, declaring that Starmer had crossed a line no Prime Minister could ever retreat from. The public reaction was even harsher. Overnight polling showed a catastrophic collapse in Labour's support. Numbers that once seemed untouchable after their landslide victory were now in freefall. Fresh surveys revealed 62% of Britons believe Starmer went too far, with nearly half demanding a public apology to King Charles. Reform UK, meanwhile, has surged into territory once thought unimaginable. Local party offices are overwhelmed with volunteers, donations are flooding in, and membership has doubled in days. For the first time in modern history, a movement once dismissed as fringe now stands as the front runner to seize real power. And it all unfolded in the shadow of Buckingham Palace. Inside Labour, the mood has collapsed from anxiety into outright despair. The cabinet is fractured. Senior ministers are trapped between two impossible choices: defend Starmer's remarks and risk total alienation, or quietly distance themselves in hopes of saving their own political futures. Anonymous leaks describe shouting matches inside Number 10, with aides accusing one another of incompetence and betrayal. One senior MP was quoted as saying, "The Prime Minister has not only lost control of his party, he has lost control of the country itself." The atmosphere in Westminster is not one of leadership, but of panic. And Starmer's authority is crumbling by the hour. Nigel Farage has seized the moment with calculated precision. Standing outside Reform UK headquarters, he declared that Britain had reached a historic turning point. His words resonated with millions across the nation. Farage framed Starmer's assault on the crown as proof that Labour had abandoned Britain's values, traditions, and people. He thundered that a government willing to disrespect the monarchy would never respect the public. Crowds erupted in applause. Videos of his speech spread like wildfire online, shared by disillusioned voters who, for the first time, felt someone was speaking for them. The timing was perfect. Reform UK turned what began as a royal controversy into a rallying cry for national renewal. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace has maintained official silence, but that silence is deafening. Images of King Charles retreating to Sandringham, flanked by advisors, fuel speculation that the palace is deeply disappointed by the Prime Minister's conduct. Officials privately described Starmer's remarks as inappropriate and disrespectful words that only deepen the impression of a leader at war with the very institution meant to symbolize unity. And in the eyes of the people, perception is reality. Whether or not the king deliberately endorsed Reform UK, the belief that he did is now rooted in public consciousness, and it strengthens every time Labour stumbles. The crisis is no longer just political, it is cultural. Britons are asking themselves, what kind of leader savages the monarchy in its moment of symbolic intervention? What kind of prime minister attacks the crown while inflation climbs, protests escalate, and trust in government evaporates? For many, the scandal has exposed not only Starmer's weakness, but Labour's arrogance. The very party that promised unity and stability is now seen as divisive and self-destructive. And while Labour implodes, Reform UK thrives, positioning itself as the only force strong enough to carry Britain forward. Across the nation, the mood is shifting from frustration to fury. Protesters gather outside government buildings, some carrying placards declaring "The King speaks for us" alongside the Reform UK logo. In Manchester, banners rise bearing Farage's face beside King Charles with the words "A New Britain is Rising." Such images would once have been unthinkable, but now they spread with unstoppable momentum. For Labour, the optics are catastrophic. For Reform, they are historic. Every hour without resolution pushes Britain deeper into uncharted waters. Constitutional scholars warn this is the gravest rupture between Crown and government since Edward VIII's abdication crisis. Commentators argue that Starmer has committed a blunder so severe, the unraveling of his leadership is playing out like a political thriller in real time. What began as a furious behind-closed-doors outburst has spiraled into a full-scale constitutional crisis unlike anything Britain has faced in recent memory. Across Westminster, whispers have grown into open conversations. Has the Prime Minister just signed his own political death warrant? For many inside Labour, the answer is yes. Senior aides leak stories of panic inside Number 10, describing an atmosphere of defeat rather than determination. Cabinet members are quietly reaching out to allies, some even exploring ways to distance themselves from a leader who appears to be dragging the party into oblivion. The anger at Starmer is not confined to his opponents. His own colleagues are seething. Backbench MPs, already disillusioned by Labour's broken promises and economic failures, now view his clash with the monarchy as unforgivable. "This is not just a mistake," one insider confided, "it's a betrayal of everything we claim to stand for." Even within the shadow cabinet, divisions are widening. Some argue Starmer must issue an immediate apology to King Charles to salvage what little credibility remains. Others insist that retreating now would be fatal, cementing the perception of weakness. Paralysis has set in. The government is no longer debating policy, it is debating survival. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace remains silent, but the silence is suffocating. There has been no comment, no clarification, no denial of reports that Charles met privately with Reform UK figures. Each day without a statement strengthens the public's assumption that the king has shifted his moral weight away from Labour and toward reform. True or not, perception has become reality. And that reality has electrified Nigel Farage's movement. For years, Reform UK was dismissed as a protest party. But in this moment of crisis, Labour crumbling, Starmer attacking the crown, and the monarchy perceived as nodding toward change, reform has transformed into something far more powerful, a vessel for the hopes of millions who feel betrayed. Across Britain, the anger is palpable. Families crushed by soaring food prices and energy bills see in Starmer not a leader, but an arrogant politician lashing out at the very institution meant to embody stability. Farmers, pensioners, and working-class households are rallying behind reform's promise of renewal, declaring Labour no longer speaks for them. In Birmingham, Leeds, and Manchester, protests have erupted with a fury not seen in decades. Chants of reform is the future and the king stands with us echo through the crowds, amplified by a social media storm Labour cannot control. The press has only intensified the blaze. Front pages scream of Starmer's fatal outburst and The Crown versus Number 10. Television panels debate whether the Prime Minister has already lost the moral authority to govern. Even Labour-friendly commentators admit the damage may be irreversible. "You do not attack the Crown and expect to survive," one leading columnist wrote. The narrative has hardened in the public mind. Starmer is at war with Britain's foundations, while reform is aligned with its traditions. Farage, ever the opportunist, has played the moment to perfection. Calm, statesmanlike, and unshaken, he emphasizes respect for the monarchy, national identity, and the struggles of ordinary people. His words resonate not just with his base but with voters who once believed in Labour's promise of stability. In a single stroke, Starmer's fury has handed Farage the mantle of legitimacy he has pursued for decades. Reform UK is no longer viewed as a movement from the margins, it is now the alternative government in waiting. Inside Number 10, desperation has turned into chaos. Emergency meetings drag late into the night. Advisors debate strategies that shift by the hour, attack reform more aggressively, double down on criticism of the monarchy, or backtrack with a carefully worded statement of respect. None of these paths offers salvation. Every option seems to lead to further disaster. Meanwhile, the opposition surges. Reform's poll numbers climb daily, overtaking Labour in constituency after constituency. Some surveys even suggest that if a snap election were called today, Reform could secure an unprecedented share of seats, either forcing Labour into humiliating opposition or replacing it outright as Britain's dominant political force. The cultural backlash may be the most dangerous of all. Britain is no longer divided merely along party lines, but along values. The storm-consuming Keir Starmer's premiership is no longer just a scandal, it has become a national reckoning. Across the nation, disbelief has hardened into anger, and anger has hardened into rejection. What once seemed like a fleeting controversy has exploded into an unstoppable movement against Labour's authority. The Prime Minister's savage attack on King Charles is no longer being brushed off as a slip of the tongue or a heated outburst, it is being framed as a declaration of war against the monarchy itself. A reckless gamble that has left Starmer politically isolated and Labour teetering on the edge of collapse. In Whitehall, officials scramble to contain the political wildfire, but their efforts only reveal how deep the crisis runs. Emergency meetings stretch late into the night, filled with frantic arguments over how to repair the damage. Some advisors urge Starmer to swallow his pride, apologize publicly, and seek an audience with the king. Others warn that doing so would humiliate him further, cementing the image of a leader forced to kneel before the crown. The indecision is paralyzing. Every hour of silence feeds the perception of chaos, and every attempted defense only backfires. The government is no longer governing. It is simply fighting to survive. The Labour Party itself is splintering. Backbench MPs, terrified of losing their seats, are already plotting to distance themselves from Starmer. Whispers of a leadership challenge grow louder each day. Some openly discuss a no-confidence vote, while others quietly explore alliances with centrists or even reform-aligned independents. What was once unthinkable, a fractured Labour Party collapsing under the weight of its leader's blunder, is now a real possibility. The contrast could not be starker. Reform UK is surging with unstoppable momentum. Membership is exploding, volunteers are flooding into local offices, and donations are pouring in from across the nation. The energy is raw, powerful, and unprecedented. For years, Nigel Farage's critics dismissed him as a provocateur. Today, he stands as the face of a movement that many now believe is destined to seize power. His calm, deliberate speeches contrast sharply with Starmer's fury. While Labour burns in chaos, Farage projects confidence, order, and vision. To millions of ordinary Britons, the choice has never been clearer: a collapsing government clinging to power, or a rising force promising renewal. The symbolism of the monarchy looms large over this battle. Buckingham Palace may remain silent, but silence itself has become a weapon. The King's refusal to deny reports of his meeting with Reform UK fuels the perception that he has shifted his moral weight away from Labour. In a constitutional monarchy, the Crown does not need to speak, its influence is felt in what it does not say. And in this moment, that silence has turned the tide of public opinion against Starmer. Across the country, protests grow larger and louder. Outside government buildings in London, Manchester, and Birmingham, crowds chant for Starmer's resignation. Some carry banners declaring "The King speaks for us, Labour betrayed Britain." Others wave Reform UK flags, merging the image of monarchy with the momentum of change. This fusion of tradition and rebellion has created a perfect storm, uniting those betrayed by Labour's failures with those craving a return to national pride. Britain's foundations are shaking, and the aftershocks are only beginning. The media coverage is relentless. Night after night, television panels dissect every word of Starmer's outburst, every whisper from within the palace, every new poll showing Labour sinking further. Commentators call it the greatest constitutional rupture of the modern era. Historians compare it to the abdication crisis, warning that Britain is drifting into uncharted waters where monarchy and government are no longer partners, but adversaries. The narrative is clear: Keir Starmer has set himself against the crown, against tradition, and against the heartbeat of the nation. In doing so, he may have doomed not only his leadership but Labour's claim to dominance for a generation. Inside Number 10, desperation reigns. Staffers describe a prime minister oscillating between fury and despair, lashing out one moment, retreating into silence the next. Allies are abandoning him, enemies are circling, and the public has already delivered its verdict. Labour promised renewal and unity. Instead, it has delivered chaos and division.